I never thought marriage would feel like suffocation. Not after everything I gave up just to be with him. But as I sat silently across from his mother, who was stirring her tea like she was grinding a thread into it, I knew something had changed. Her words echoed in my mind, still warm and sharp. You can't serve two masters, dear. Either your job or your marriage. Pick one. It wasn't even a discussion. It was a command. My name is Ariba, and until a few weeks ago, I thought I was marrying into a supportive, progressive family. My husband, Hassan, was charming, ambitious, and had convinced me that our dreams would grow together. He admired my job, at least he used to. I work as a software engineer, and before marriage, my career was my pride. I climbed every step on my own, scholarships, night classes, even freelancing to make ends meet. I had value. I mattered. But things shifted after the wedding. I remember the first sign, subtle but strange. Hassan had once asked me almost playfully, what if he didn't work anymore? Wouldn't it be nice to just relax at home? I had laughed it off, thinking it was hypothetical. But now, looking at the cold steel in my mother-in-law's eyes, I realized this had been coming for a while. She didn't ask me. She told me. Like, I was her property. I just don't think it's appropriate, Beta, she said that afternoon, while Hassan scrolled his phone silently beside me, avoiding eye contact. It doesn't look nice when the daughter-in-law is working out there, especially when the son is doing fine. It creates unnecessary talk. I swallowed hard. Unnecessary talk from whom? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. She looked up with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. People. Hassan didn't say a word. That silence, his silence, was the moment I knew I had to be very, very careful. You see, this wasn't just about quitting my job. This was about control, about power. And I was about to be tested in ways I couldn't have imagined. That evening, I sat in my room, staring at the framed certificate on my wall, Best Developer of the Year, 2022, and wondered how my life had turned into a polite prison. Hassan came in, saw me quiet, and instead of asking if I was okay, he said, Amy just wants what's best for the family. I turned slowly. And what about what's best for me? He hesitated. You'll get used to it. Lots of women leave their jobs after marriage. That phrase felt like a dagger. I had never imagined that the man who once called me his inspiration would now reduce me to a statistic. Something inside me cracked, but it wasn't defeat. It was a warning bell. The next few days passed in a blur of silent meals, passive-aggressive remarks, and growing isolation. My messages from work went unanswered. My presence in meetings became less visible. I was afraid to speak on calls in front of my in-laws, knowing every word would be twisted into arrogance or disobedience. I had tried explaining once, tried to tell them how much my job meant to me. My father-in-law had raised his eyebrows and said, No krani ban kugar wallen ka kia benega? A servant. That's what they thought I was becoming. Because I wanted to contribute to the world. Because I had dreams. One night, as I sat on the balcony with my laptop, hoping to find a moment of peace, I heard whispers from the hallway. She's too proud of her degrees. Thinks she's better than us. She'll make your son her slave if you don't stop her now. I froze. The venom in those voices wasn't just toxic, it was personal. The next morning my boss called. Ariba, we need you to lead the upcoming project. It's a big client from Dubai. You're the only one with the right experience. It should have been a moment of celebration. Instead, my hands trembled as I looked toward the kitchen, where my in-laws sat discussing my fate like I wasn't even alive. Hassan came up behind me and said softly, You should turn it down. They're already upset. Just keep the peace. Peace? Peace wasn't peace if it came at the cost of my identity. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying every sacrifice I'd made, every late-night coding, every job interview, every exam. I remembered my mother's proud smile when I got my first paycheck. I remembered how Hassan used to boast about me. And I remembered how that pride had turned to silence. By morning, something inside me had shifted. It wasn't anger. It wasn't grief. It was resolve. I got dressed, Not in casual home clothes like they expected, but in formal office wear. Black trousers, light blue shirt, polished flats. I tied my hair back, picked up my laptop bag. As I stepped into the kitchen, silence fell. Hassan looked confused. His mother looked furious. "Where are you going?" she asked sharply. I looked her in the eyes and said the first thing that had felt like me in weeks. "To work." Her lips parted in disbelief. "Didn't we make it clear?" I raised my hand, calm but firm. "With respect, this is my life. My career. I won't give it up to make anyone comfortable." Hassan's face darkened. "This is not how we do things here." I stared at him for a long moment. "Then maybe I don't belong here." And I walked out. But what I didn't know was that this single act of defiance was just the beginning. They weren't going to let me go that easily. And what came next? I wasn't prepared for. I thought walking out that door would give me peace. But peace isn't what followed. What followed was war. Cold, quiet, calculated. The moment I returned home from work that evening, the atmosphere had shifted. My tea wasn't served. Dinner wasn't prepared for me like it used to be. It wasn't an accident, it was a signal. Hassan barely looked at me. His jaw was tight, his words clipped. "How is your rebellion?" he asked, his tone sharp, almost mocking. I didn't flinch. It was a regular day at the office. Productive. He scoffed. "This isn't going to end well." I replied simply. I didn't start it. That night, I ate alone. No one sat at the table with me. The house, once warm and bustling, now felt like a courtroom, and I was on trial for daring to be myself. But I refused to bow. The next morning, I was up early again. Same outfit, same confidence. As I passed the lounge, my mother-in-law called out with a sweetness that tasted like poison. "Beta, won't you help me prepare breakfast before you leave?" I stopped. "I have to catch my ride in 5 minutes," I said. "I'll help when I return." She smiled, but her eyes narrowed. "We all have responsibilities in this house, Sariba." "And I'm fulfilling mine," I answered. Hassan was watching from the corner. He said nothing. Not a word. Again, that silence? It screamed louder than any insult. By the third day, the tension grew unbearable. They stopped pretending. My in-laws no longer spoke to me directly. If they wanted something, they said it through Hassan, as if I were invisible. They complained to him that I was ignoring the home, destroying family values, and infecting their son with modern ideas. I heard it all. Worse, I saw how Hassan was starting to change. One evening, he waited for me at the door, arms crossed. "We need to talk," he said. I nodded. "Okay." He didn't waste time. "You need to stop working late. It's embarrassing for my parents. The neighbors are asking questions. You come home looking like you're tired of us." I blinked slowly. "That's because I am tired, Hassan. I work. I contribute. What exactly am I doing wrong?" "You're being stubborn." I tilted my head. "Or maybe I'm just not weak." That stung. I saw it in his face. But I didn't care anymore. They wanted me broken. Small. Silent. But I had survived too much to crumble now. The next morning, I found my clothes removed from the main wardrobe and folded neatly on a chair. My room, the one I shared with Hassan, had been rearranged. His mother was there, folding sheets. She looked up, satisfied. "You can sleep in the guest room now. It's just more appropriate until things calm down." I stared at her. She didn't blink. I said nothing. I picked up my bag, walked out, and went to work. And that's when the cracks started showing, not in me, but in them. Because while they were trying to isolate me, the world outside was cheering me on. My project in the office got approved. I received public praise from the client. My boss emailed the entire company congratulating me. I was invited to speak at a local tech event. The recognition I had longed for, fought for, was now mine. And they hated it. That weekend, the ultimate blow came. Hassan's cousin was visiting from Canada, Sarah. A charming, successful woman. Independent. Exactly the kind of daughter-in-law my in-laws pretended to admire on social media. At dinner, Sarah asked me about my work. I smiled and told her about my recent achievements. Her eyes lit up. Wow, you're a rock star, Ariba. That's amazing. I thanked her, but I could feel the glares piercing my skin from across the table. After she left, it exploded. My mother-in-law cornered me in the kitchen. You embarrassed us in front of her, boasting about your job like a shameless girl. What kind of example are you setting? I looked her straight in the eye and said, the kind that inspires women to believe in themselves. She turned red. You think this house runs on your salary? You think you're something special because of some company email? No, I said. I know I'm something special because I didn't let you erase me. She raised her hand to slap me. I didn't flinch, but Hassan saw it. He rushed in, held her arm midair. Amy, he shouted. Her mouth dropped open. A moment of silence passed. Then she burst into tears. Accused me of tearing the family apart. But something had shifted in Hassan's eyes. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't looking at me with resentment.
He was seeing me again.
Seeing what his silence had done. Later that night, he came to the guest room. He sat down, hands folded. I didn't know it had gotten this bad.
I didn't say anything.
I thought if I kept quiet, things would settle. But they only got worse. I failed you. I looked at him, tired. I needed a partner, Hassan, not a spectator. He nodded. I'm sorry, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. Because an apology doesn't erase betrayal. And his guilt couldn't undo the scars left by silence. Still, something inside me softened just a little. Not because I forgave him, but because I saw something he hadn't seen before. My strength wasn't the problem. Their fear of it was. The next day, the final battle began. Not with screams. Not with ultimatums. But with something far more dangerous. They called my parents. When my parents walked into that house, I knew this wasn't a casual visit. They were quiet, their expressions tense. My mother avoided my eyes. My father held a folded newspaper, as if it was some kind of shield. My heart sank. We all sat in the lounge, like strangers in a courtroom. My mother-in-law began, voice sickly sweet. Hamariba ki balai kuliya hai kh rahihain. Ye job wagara ka culture hamari family, main kabi nahi raha. My mother gave a slow nod. Hamari bi yehi koshish hodi hai kabachigar ko bi samj. My breath caught in my throat. My father cleared his throat, looking directly at me now. Beta, tum samajdar ho. Hargar main thoda compromise karna pada hai. Job zarori hai, lekangar esi bar kanahi. The word compromise echoed through my mind like a punch. I looked around. These were the people who raised me, who sent me to school with pride, who praised me for every medal I brought home. And now, they sat here, asking me to fold myself into a version of me that pleased others. My in-laws were winning. I took a deep breath, calm but firm. Abu, Ami, I love and respect you both. But this, I pointed around the room, this is not compromise. This is erasure. My mother flinched slightly. My father looked uncomfortable. I turned to my mother-in-law. Epilogon any mui kabi apna banaya hai nahi. Harwakt Mary Kamiyan Jinwait Rahi. Then finally I looked at Hassan. You told me you loved me, that we'd build a life together. But the moment I became inconvenient, you stood back and let them tear me down. He opened his mouth to speak, but I wasn't finished. I've cried in silence. I've slept in a guest room in my own marriage. I've been ignored, mocked, and emotionally isolated. And I'm done pretending it's okay. Everyone was quiet. My voice didn't shake. Or agar aapilogon ko lagda hai kamari kamai, Mary Pachin, Mary self-respect is gar kulia boj hai. Then maybe this house was never meant to be mine. Hassan stood up. Ariba, please. No, I said. Let me finish. I turned to my parents again. I became everything you dreamed of, educated, hardworking, confident. But you're asking me to shrink because this house feels too small for who I've become. My mother wiped a tear. My father looked down. The silence was suffocating. And then my younger brother walked in. He had come to pick my parents up, but stopped when he heard what I was saying. API, he said softly. You don't have to take this. Not anymore. That one sentence broke me. Because someone in the room finally saw me. Not as a wife, not as a daughter-in-law, not even as a daughter, but as a human being deserving of respect. I picked up my phone. Dialed my lawyer. Yes, please proceed with the papers. I've made my decision. My mother gasped. Ariba, no. I stood up. Yes, Amy. Because if I stay, I'll lose myself. And I'd rather be alone and whole than married and broken. My in-laws looked as if I'd slapped them. Hassan sat down slowly, eyes wide. I thought you'd never leave, he said quietly. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. That was your mistake. Later that evening, I packed my bags. No one stopped me. Not this time. My mother helped me, quietly, tears streaming down her face. My father waited at the door, silent. But as I stepped out of that house, I felt lighter than I had in months. I had walked in as a bride. I was walking out as a woman reborn.
Free.
The first night away from that house was silent. No ticking clocks. No slamming doors. No passive-aggressive taunts disguised as concern. Just me and my own breathing. I stayed at my parents' place for a few weeks, but this time, I wasn't a broken daughter coming home in shame. I was a woman choosing herself. I was regaining everything they had asked me to give up. And strangely, for the first time in months, my parents began to see me again, not as someone who failed in marriage, but as someone who survived something quietly soul-destroying. My father no longer gave me disappointed glances. He started asking about my office meetings, offering chai when I worked late into the night. My mother, once my biggest critic, now left affirmations on sticky notes near my mirror. You're stronger than they ever expected. She was right. The very job my in-laws wanted me to leave became my lifeline. I immersed myself in projects, found joy in my creativity again, and most of all, I stopped apologizing for being ambitious. One day at work, my boss called me in. You've been doing exceptional work, she said. There's an international workshop in Dubai next month. I want you to represent us. My heart skipped.
Me?
Representing the company abroad? The same woman who was told she should cook and clean quietly? I agreed. And standing there, weeks later, in a conference room full of powerful professionals from across the globe, I introduced myself not as someone's wife or someone's daughter-in-law, but as Ariba Khan, creative director. There was applause after my presentation. Handshakes. Respect. But none of it compared to the feeling of owning my name again. Of saying it without shame. Without fear. Months passed. One rainy evening, I received a call. Unknown number. I answered. Ariba. It was Hassan. For a moment, silence stretched between us. Then he spoke again. I didn't realize how much you meant to that house until you left. Everything feels colder. Quieter. I didn't say anything. I miss you. Still, silence. I heard about your promotion, he added, voice low. You always wanted something big.
You got it.
You were always meant for more. I let out a breath. You only realize someone's value when they stop asking to be seen, I replied gently. I made mistakes, he said. You let others decide who I should be. I corrected. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. I want to make things right, he said, almost whispering. I paused. Not because I was tempted, but because I had waited so long to hear those words, and now that they came, they held no power over me. You want to make things right? I said. Then let me go. Hassan was quiet again. Then softly, I already have.
Click.
The call ended. So did the last thread tying me to my old life. Weeks later, I walked past my old office building and saw a girl sitting outside, sobbing quietly, her dupatta crumpled in her lap. She reminded me of myself from a year ago. I sat beside her and handed her a tissue. Job issues. I asked gently. No, she replied. Marriage pressure. They want me to quit everything. I smiled softly. Then don't, I said. You are not being selfish for choosing your future. She looked at me, eyes wide. "I'm scared," she whispered. I nodded. So was I. And I shared my story, like a torch passed between warriors. That's the thing about courage. It's contagious. That night, I went home to my new apartment, small, cozy, filled with light. A place where every object belonged to me. Every wall heard laughter, not insults. Every corner echoed peace. I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker like stars trying to survive the noise. I whispered to myself, "You showed them who's boss, not with rage, not with revenge, but with resilience." And that's when I realized I had not just survived. I had risen. 6 months later, I got an invitation. An embossed envelope, hand-delivered. I already knew what it was before I opened it. Hassan's sister, Maham, was getting married. And for some reason, they wanted me there. A part of me laughed. Another part was curious. Not out of pettiness, but to see had anything really changed? My therapist once told me, closure doesn't always come in conversations. Sometimes it walks in when you enter a room as a different person. So I went. Not for them, but for the version of me that used to cry on those same cold marble floors. For the woman who once debated whether she should keep breathing just to keep someone else comfortable. I walked into that decorated house, no longer as the quiet daughter-in-law who used to carry trays. I walked in like I belonged to myself. Their eyes found me instantly. Maham smiled awkwardly. Hassan stood beside her, still looking like a man with unfinished thoughts. His mother? She froze. That was my final moment of quiet triumph, watching her blink, almost as if she couldn't believe I had the audacity to glow without their approval. "Ariba Beta," she started. I raised my hand gently, with the softest smile. "You don't have to say anything," I said. "We've both already said enough in silence." She nodded stiffly. Maybe she'd changed. Maybe not. But I had, and that was all that mattered. I sat quietly through the event, congratulated Maham with genuine warmth, then left with peace blooming inside me like jasmine after monsoon. No bitterness. No guilt. Just peace. 2 weeks later, something unexpected happened. I got a call from a women's shelter. A social worker had read a blog post I'd written anonymously about my experience, and now they wanted to turn it into a workshop series. They wanted me to guide women trying to escape emotional manipulation masked as culture. They said my story had already helped dozens of women reach out for help. I stared at the email. I wasn't just healing. I was becoming the hand I once needed. That night, as I prepared the first workshop outline, I felt something shift. Not in the world around me, but in my soul. There was power in reclaiming your narrative. There was magic in saying, I walked through fire and I didn't come out ash, I came out gold. One evening, I found a handwritten note slipped under my apartment door. There was no name on it. Just 5 words. I hope you're still shining. I smiled. No, Hassan. I'm not just still shining. I'm blazing. And I'm never dimming again. They asked me to shrink. I became the whole damn sky.